After the pandemic, everyone knows that the Australian housing market has been recovering. A large number of overseas buyers have been purchasing properties in Australia, especially buyers from China, Hong Kong, and India. In the past financial year, the total transactions by these overseas buyers amounted to 5 billion AUD, which has made a significant contribution to the Australian property market. However, last Sunday, just a few days ago, Financial Review suddenly reported a news story that overseas buyers and temporary residents would be banned from purchasing second-hand properties in Australia for a period of 2 years. This caused widespread panic in the market. That evening, I received numerous messages asking what was going on. Many people feared that the exit of overseas buyers and temporary residents from the market would worsen the Australian property market situation. Additionally, the current government announced on February 17th that starting from April 1st, 2025, foreign investors would be prohibited from buying existing homes until March 31st, 2027, at which point the government will review the situation and decide whether to extend the ban. Treasurer Jim Chalmers clearly stated that this ban would allow Australians to avoid competing with foreign investors for existing homes. Furthermore, Housing Minister Claire O'Neill directly expressed that the purpose of this policy is to release thousands of properties for Australian residents. But is this really the case? Will the Australian property market collapse? Before discussing whether the Australian housing market will collapse, let's first look at the impact of overseas buyers on the second-hand property market in Australia prior to this policy change. Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is Invest with Alison, sharing some stories about Australian life, financial management, and real estate investment. I'm an Australian lawyer and accountant and a licensed real estate agent across different states in Australia. I have published a book called Investing in Australian Properties, Building Financial Freedom. The following content is personal opinion only and does not constitute any investment advice. Some viewers have raised a point of confusion. They ask if existing homes refers to new homes built by developers. This is actually a misunderstanding based on the difference in English and Chinese terminology. To clarify, we need to refer to the Australian government's FIRB, Foreign Investment Review Board, guidance note for the correct definition. In law, everything revolves around definitions, which is why many legal regulations and contracts start with definitions, because definitions are everything. Let's now look at the definition of established dwellings. This explicitly states that established dwellings do not include new dwellings. Now, let's see the definition of new dwellings. New dwellings refer to properties that are either under construction or have been completed, but have never been sold or inhabited. In other words, when a developer finishes building a new property and rents it out to others, it is no longer a new dwelling, but an established dwelling, and thus it becomes a second-hand property. Therefore, the Australian government's statement that overseas buyers are prohibited from purchasing established homes means they cannot buy second-hand properties. However, they can still buy new homes built by developers, provided the property has not been sold to others or occupied yet. Before the introduction of this new policy, the Australian government already had subtle restrictions on overseas buyers purchasing second-hand homes. Their approach wasn't as decisive as this new policy. Instead, overseas buyers were required to pay 3 times the usual FIRB fee if they wanted to purchase a second-hand home. Many overseas buyers were still willing to pay the higher fee to buy second-hand properties. You might ask, can overseas buyers purchase second-hand homes? Actually, before the new policy, overseas buyers could purchase second-hand homes if they met 3 conditions. First is they must hold a valid visa for at least 1 year. And the second is the property must be purchased for personal use, not as an investment. In other words, overseas buyers were not allowed to buy second-hand homes as investments. According to the 2021 ABS data, the largest group of temporary visa holders in Australia, besides residents from New Zealand, were international students. However, international students typically rent apartments near their schools or stay in student dormitories, so very few of them purchase second-hand homes. Moreover, students prefer to buy new homes because if they leave Australia after graduation, they would have to sell the second-hand property, which carries the risk of potentially losing money. In 2022 to 23, there were 5,360 residential real estate transactions involving foreign ownership. Of these transactions, only about 34% were for second-hand properties, around 1,800 transactions. The largest proportion of these transactions occurred in Queensland and Victoria. In Victoria, 458 second-hand properties were purchased by overseas buyers, while in Queensland, 403 properties were purchased. South Australia had 313 such transactions, and New South Wales had 165. This indicates that overseas buyers, while eligible to purchase second-hand homes, only did so in a limited number of cases. Now let's discuss the potential impact of the new policy on the market. This is the most pressing concern. Will the Australian housing market collapse? I share the same view as major media outlets. The Australian housing market will not be significantly impacted by this policy. You might argue that banning the purchase of second-hand homes will surely have an impact. However, if we examine the data and analysis we've discussed earlier, overseas buyers with temporary visas are not the primary drivers of the Australian housing market. Even if the policy removes their purchasing power, it will only decrease the market activity by a mere 0.4%. In other words, the policy's impact on the Australian property market is minimal. It's almost negligible. Furthermore, overseas buyers can still purchase Australian properties, just not second-hand ones. They can buy new homes or off-the-plan properties, which means the prices of new homes and off-the-plan properties are likely to increase. This indicates that there will still be demand for property investment, especially for new homes. This policy will encourage developers to build more properties. The third impact is that the rental market will worsen. Rental prices will rise significantly. Therefore, investors should pay attention to the long-term rental market. When temporary visa holders are no longer allowed to buy second-hand properties, and if there are no new homes available in that area, they will be forced to rent instead of buying. Thus, rental prices in major immigrant cities in Australia, such as Sydney and Melbourne, will continue to rise. The already tight rental market will become even more difficult to navigate, with new immigrants and temporary residents finding it increasingly hard to rent. Local residents will also face much higher rental pressure. As the threshold for buying homes increases and rental demand surges, the long-term rental market is becoming an area worth focusing on. Will the ban on overseas buyers help reduce property prices and make it easier for locals to enter the market? I believe you may already have an answer to that question. Also, the rental market will become much more challenging. So why is the government implementing this policy? We believe the government is using this policy as a tool to gain votes. It's the final move by the Labour Party. If you've been following the election, you may have noticed the statements made by both the Labour and Liberal Party leaders. You might feel that the Labour Party's announcement of this policy seems familiar. Let's think about it carefully. The policy to ban foreign buyers from purchasing properties for 2 years, wasn't this a policy proposed by Liberal Party leader Dutton? Why is the Labour Party copying it before the election? Actually, here's the reasoning. According to our polling data, Labour's voter support has dropped by 3.2% since the last election. We've observed the voting sentiment across various sectors, and it seems that the Liberal Party might win the next election. Facing such a serious election situation, the Labour Party had no choice but to take emergency measures to win back public support. But we need to point out that the Labour Party had previously criticised Dutton's policy of banning overseas buyers very harshly. However, after the Liberal Party's support soared, the Labour Party seemed to have woken up. They decided to copy the policy before the election while they still hold power, hoping to win back votes. Both parties are quite smart, because they know that the party that can more effectively solve the housing shortage issue in Australia will have a better chance of winning. However, from a fundamental analysis, this policy doesn't solve the core issue of high property prices in Australia. As long as the supply shortage isn't addressed, the factors contributing to the growth of the Australian property market will remain. I'm sure the financial elites and the brains behind the scenes are aware of this, but with the election looming, they are forced to come up with a solution, even if it doesn't tackle the core problem. The latest data from the Australian Bureau of Statistics confirms that more than 1,000 new immigrants arrive in Australia every day. However, the number of new homes approved for construction is far behind the pace of population growth. As immigration continues to rise, the pressure of housing demand in Australia will keep increasing. Even if foreign buyers are banned from purchasing second-hand homes, the impact will be very minimal. Therefore, we believe that this new policy is just a political tool to win votes, not a substantial reform with real impact. The government is trying to shift attention from the housing crisis by banning foreign buyers from purchasing second-hand homes, but the core issue of housing in Australia has not been addressed. I believe that if the government does not speed up construction and increase housing supply, the issue of high property prices making it difficult for locals to enter the market will remain hard to solve effectively. Additionally, with interest rates starting to drop, a lot of inquiries about buying property. Many people are eager to enter the market now that they're seeing interest rate cuts. I believe property prices in Australia will soon see another surge. If you're interested in investing or have questions, feel free to leave a comment below and interact with me. If you'd like to schedule a one-on-one consultation, you can WhatsApp or email me or visit my website investwithalison.com to book a time to chat. Thank you for your time. See you next time. Bye-bye.